Hey everybody, I'm back. I know I'm a bit late, but I actually have a valid excuse this time. So the reason is I actually uploaded a different video yesterday with my sister. So I didn't want to confuse the 7 people who actually watch my videos by posting 2 videos on the same day. So for those 7 people, this is why I was late. In today's episode, I actually want to talk about the first step when I decide to write a book. And that is deciding where to write it. What do I mean by where? So basically there are different ways to start a book. But for me, I think the first step should be deciding if you're going to write it on Microsoft Word, deciding if you're going to write it on Pages, which is the equivalent on Macs, or you can choose an entirely different app. For me, I think deciding where to write it is really important because if you don't like where you write it, then you're going to have yet another excuse to stop yourself from writing. And Lord knows, we already have too much of those. That's why, for me, it's really important that I choose the right program from the beginning. Because it's going to be really annoying if I switch to another program halfway through the book, right? Now, I'll also discuss writing by hand and typewriters. Because believe it or not, I've actually used those methods to write a book before, or at least a story. But for the most part in this video, I will be focusing on Scrivener, Microsoft Word, Pages, and Google Docs. And I'll discuss the advantages and disadvantages with each of those programs, and I'll end the video by telling you all which program I've chosen to write my new book. Additionally, I'll also explain why I decided to choose that program over all the others. But we'll get to that, won't we? So let me start with the oldest method, writing by hand. So I've actually tried writing by hand, but I will tell you the story. I avoid writing notes by hand simply because I know that I won't be able to read my notes again after I've already taken them. So I know that if I'm in class and I'm writing notes, it's going to be worthless. That's why I always use a computer or even my cell phone to take notes. It's better than writing by hand. That being said, like most kids who wanted to tell a story, I decided to write my first story with pen and paper. Well, actually, I used a pencil because, to quote my penmanship teacher, my handwriting was too bad to be unerasable. So yeah, many people can attest to my terrible handwriting. I'll leave my references down below, of course. But suffice to say, I understand why some people would choose to write a book by hand. There are some notable examples of writers active today who have done that, actually. My favorite example would be Owen Colfer, who wrote the Artemis Fowl series. The Artemis Fowl series is my favorite young adult series, but I genuinely can't imagine the amount of effort and time it must have taken to write that entire series by hand. Additionally, it's worth noting that if you're going to write something by hand, you're going to have to go through the process of typing it up, right? Because very few publishers would actually accept an unsolicited manuscript that was written by hand. Like, if you can name a few publishers who do, I would actually love to hear that, so go to the comments and tell me off. But for the most part, I don't know of any. I think Owen Colfer had a long-standing relationship with his agent, so that's why it was able to work. But otherwise, if you're starting out like me, I don't see that working. Furthermore, can you imagine the carpal tunnel he must have had after writing the first book alone? So I understand the benefits of writing by hand because you want to be like William Shakespeare, although I think he wrote by a quill, right? So I understand that. But in terms of practicality, in terms of functionality, I just don't see that working out. That's why I would advise against it. If you really think that that's a great part of your process, because I know some people who still do that to this day, then go on, all the power to you. But I'm just saying that there's a good reason why I don't do it. But if you have great handwriting, then you should do it maybe. That brings us to one of the other oldest methods, writing with a typewriter. Okay, so I'm a bit pretentious, which should explain why I, a 90s kid, has experience with writing a book with a typewriter. A while ago, my grandfather passed down his typewriter to me, and mostly because I asked for it. But I decided to write a story with it, Well, more than a couple of stories. But here was the catch. A typewriter is a machine that needs maintenance, right? But imagine if you had a machine back in the early 90s and you didn't use it for 2 decades. Some things are bound to go wrong. So the problem with this typewriter, the letter S did not work and the apostrophe did not work. Can you imagine that? I did not know how much I relied on contractions until I was unable to use them when writing. If you look back at the sentence I just said, I did not use a single contraction. That's because I got really used to avoiding them when I was writing with the typewriter. So I would really advise against using a typewriter because just like with writing by hand, there are a lot of problems with it. One being, it's so hard to sort all of that out, especially if you're writing a complex novel with a typewriter. For me, there are only a couple of reasons why you should consider writing with a typewriter. One, and honestly, this is the best reason, if an old woman in a vintage store gives it to you, and then you find out that you can write best-selling horror mysteries on that typewriter. The catch is, these monsters that you create come true. If that happens, then yeah, you should totally write on it. Yes, you're creating monsters, but bestsellers already do that. So I mean, I don't see much of a difference. But second reason is because you might have sentimental value attached to it. If you have Ernest Hemingway's last typewriter before he committed suicide, well, I would suggest to sell it to a museum or something. That would be worth a lot of money. But if you do have something like that, or something even better than that, then maybe I can understand why you would choose to write with a typewriter. That being said, I personally will not be writing my next book with a typewriter. In fact, I don't think I will ever write with a typewriter again. And one of the reasons you can give to someone who's giving you heat for not using a typewriter, in case you're ever around a hipster like that, you should tell them that you're trying to save paper. That's also a reason that you can give for not writing by hand, by the way. So yes, save the environment and don't use a typewriter.
Microsoft Word. The first book I ever wrote was written on Microsoft Word. I hesitate to call it a book considering I was 6 years old and I'd ripped off the plot of Lost and Band of Brothers and added some overt religious themes to it as a bonus. But around the time I was 12, I stopped writing books on Word. Before I elaborate why, I'll explain some pros about this program. Number 1, it's familiar. Pretty much every person has written something on Word, whether it's a paper, a short story, a contract, name it. So you're probably going to be familiar with all the settings. Number 2, straightforward. Type and click save. Everything is straightforward. Number 3, your computer probably has it. Sometimes it's not about having the fanciest word processor, it's about writing. So if your computer has Word and nothing else, then why not? Now let's start with the cons. Templates. Yes, I did say that writing a book should just entail you writing, and that's it. But having a template is really great, and it's the differentiating factor for people deciding between writing programs. So let's look at Microsoft Word's templates. If you type book, you'll see these 2 options, maybe more depending on your most recent update and all that. But for the most part, the templates available on Word are pretty sparse. You can also Google some templates online, but then why don't you just get a program which provides a great template already? Exports. So Word is great because you can export it to PDF or TF, but not EPUB. In case you don't know, EPUB is short for electronic publication and is typically the default formatting for ebooks. So if your plan is to self-publish and you wrote your book on Word, you'll have to use a third-party site or program to convert it into an EPUB. It's a relatively small inconvenience, but this detracts from Word's merits. Google Docs. Let's talk about Google Drive. I'm a very big fan of Google Drive and by extension, Google Docs. If you have a Gmail account, you have access to Google Sheets, Google Slides, and of course, Google Docs. What's great about Google Docs? Number 1, cloud saving. You can turn on autosave on your Microsoft Word and it will save automatically to your OneDrive if you have one. However, there's still this fear of that failing, probably because of some incidents in the past when Word was less reliable. I don't have that fear with Google Docs. Number 2, multiple devices. Yes, you can download Word on your other devices too. I know, but stick with me. The UI of Google Docs is flawless on every device. That is a bit subjective, but it's so easy to use, and I never have to worry about writing something on my phone and not being able to access it on my laptop, in most cases. But let's go into the cons for that. Number 1, templates. Same problem as Microsoft Word. You can download templates with a quick Google search, but again, if we're talking about writing a book, it's clear that this wasn't one of the main things that Google had in mind when making Google Docs. That's okay, it doesn't ruin it for me, but it does make me rethink some things. Number 2, internet. Yes, you can still use Google Docs even without internet, but imagine you're not connected to the internet for a week or two. I know, crazy. Now you can't start a document on your laptop, and you can really only work on your book on your phone or tablet. That's a big handicap if you ask me. Pages. It's a bit weird of me to recommend this because I was never a big fan of Pages, but I've started to see some good with it. Let's go into that. Number 1, aesthetics. I think this word has been terribly overused in recent years, but in the case of Pages, it's really appropriate. Whether it's the layout of the program or the beautiful templates, it is aesthetically pleasing. Speaking of which, templates! Finally, we found a program that has some good templates for novels built in. They have a variety of options available up front, and they even separated book templates into its own category. This is just flat out convenient. Number 3, export. Remember my problem with exporting on Microsoft Word? That it doesn't offer EPUBs? Pages does. In fact, they have the book templates formatted to match the EPUB format. It's beautiful. Now that I'm done drooling, let's go into the cons. Exclusivity. Number 1, exclusivity. Okay, you have a PC, an Android phone, and a non-Apple tablet. That means you can't use Pages. And while I understand Apple's intentions, it really sucks for people who want to try out some of these templates. My suggestion, if you really want these templates, you can ask a friend with an Apple device to start a new file on Pages, export it as a Word document, and have your friend send it to you. Boom, you have the template on Word. Number 2, file sizes. This is a great concern for me. Pages have gigantic file sizes, especially compared to the smaller file sizes of Microsoft Word documents. If you don't have enough space on your laptop, writing your magnum opus on Pages might not be a great idea. Now, let's go into my favorite of the bunch. Yes, I'm admitting that I've saved my favorite program for last. Scrivener, my one true love. I admit it. So let's dive into the things that I love about it. Number 1, templates. I'm sorry, Pages, but these templates are fantastic. Scrivener offers templates for research papers, for BBC radio adaptations, for plays, and of course for books. Its book template is normally separated in folders, and those folders, if you want, can be your chapters. I normally put 2 or 3 scenes in each folder, and then when I'm done, I go to compile, and that brings us to the next great thing about Scrivener: exporting. Not only does it offer to compile your book into EPUB, it even offers the Kindle file equivalent. How amazing is that? Of course, you can also compile it into a PDF, a Word file, and many more. It's just perfect. Number 3, user-friendly. Scrivener tells you exactly how to do anything you want in incredibly clear instructions. Each new document has an introductory section at the beginning explaining to you how the format and style works. It's incredibly helpful. Number 4, cloud backup. If you really value cloud backup, you can switch that feature on, and Scrivener can take screenshots of your project to make sure that even if the autosave somehow fails, you can recreate everything through screenshots. With all these great things though, what's the problem? Number 1, price. Scrivener is not free. You can download the free version, but naturally its best features are unavailable or your output will have a watermark. When my uncle first bought me this program, it cost 63 USD. Nowadays, they've reduced the price quite a bit and you can get the standard version for $49. Worth the price, but it's definitely something to think about when deciding on your writing program of choice. Number 2, mobile app. So Scrivener is also available on the App Store for $20, and it's pretty great. There are a few issues, however. The integration between your phone and your iPad is non-existent. Scrivener outright tells you this too, and it's really difficult to sync your files and make it so that you can work on a project on your mobile device and have it update your computer version automatically. I managed when I first did it on my phone, but as of now, I still can't do it on my iPad. I'm open to any advice on this part.
Now that I'm done explaining the advantages and disadvantages of those apps, I'm going to tell you which program I've actually chosen. So I've decided to choose Pages. Why Pages? Okay, I did talk a lot about why I love Scrivener. It is basically flawless, in my opinion. But there is a minor flaw. Like I said, even when I was talking about it, there are some problems with the integration between your devices. I use my laptop a lot for work, school, and more work. So sometimes I want to give it a break. And if I want to give it a break, that means I'm going to use my iPad instead. And if I can only use my laptop to write my books, then that's going to be a bit of a problem. So that's the reason why I've chosen Pages. The fact that its templates are beautiful, the fact that the integration between devices is seamless as long as you have the same type of device. Sorry, Android. But it is just so easy to use. And for me, I have to think about the convenience of use and how much I like the UI, the user interface. But at the end of the day, if you want to write a book, I won't say, oh, you need to be able to integrate it across all your devices. You need to be able to sync it at all times. That's really not it. I'm just saying that for my purposes, that's what I've prioritized. However, for you, the only thing I can say is, no matter what program you have, no matter how much you pay for that program, hats off to you, Scrivener. No matter how amazing that program is, you need to write it. The program won't write it for yourself. If there was a program like that, I would love to hear about it and I would probably end up using it. But until that day, I'm just going to keep shuffling through these apps, these programs, and these methods that I've listed because I like to keep things interesting by doing that. I like discovering new things when I'm writing about the program, about my process, about the characters that I'm creating. So if you have a different method, that's all right. But if you're actually looking for a new program to try out, any one of these 4 programs that I've mentioned would be fantastic to use. I recommend Scrivener above all else, maybe because it actually costs money, but I just think that it was designed for writers. I think everything about it makes writing easier, more fluid, just more. So if you're having trouble deciding between these 4 and you don't mind spending a couple of bucks, well, more than a couple, then Scrivener would be the way to go. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks for everyone who's actually watched it. And once again, I'm sorry for how monotonous my voice is. That's just the way I talk. Jokes aside, I think writing is such a solitary process when you're starting out. When you don't have an agent, when you don't have an editor, when you don't have a team with you. But sharing this with everyone makes me feel like it's a bit less solitary. The fact that my friends can now watch these videos and then take screenshots to mock me with them, I don't know, it makes me feel like it's become a much more collaborative process. And this way I get to discuss it with people who actually want to write as well. And they mention, how do you start? I love being able to talk about writing with people. The only thing that writers actually like more than writing is talking about writing. But in keeping with that, I will be releasing yet another episode next week. I've actually already filmed it. So I hope you look forward to that. I'll be ending this episode with a meme about writing, and I think I'll do that with every episode because I just love memes, and the fact that there are memes about writing is just awesome for me. So I'll end each episode with a meme. I'll put it up now. Thank you and have a good day.